No surprise, the Biden administration wasted no time in releasing a statement yesterday in regards to Trump's guilty verdicts, and tone deaf is a bit of an understatement. Here's how it reads. In New York today, we saw that no one is above the law. Donald Trump has always mistakenly believed he would never face consequences for breaking the law for his own personal gain. It continues with this. The threat Trump poses to our democracy has never been greater. He is running an increasingly unhinged campaign of revenge and retribution, pledging to be a dictator on day one and calling for our Constitution to be terminated so he can regain and keep power. A second Trump term means chaos, ripping away Americans' freedoms and fomenting political violence. Gee, it's a pretty good description of what they've done to Donald Trump, isn't it? First, let's point out that Joe Biden's son is facing federal criminal charges in 2 jurisdictions. His trials begin Monday. To say that Trump believes that he would never face consequences for breaking the law for his own personal gain is an ironic thing to say, seeing how the IRS whistleblowers testified last year saying they were not allowed to pursue leads that could reveal evidence that Joe Biden committed a series of financial crimes and fraud. Second, what is this chaos they keep speaking about? We've had more chaos and corruption under Joe Biden than any other president since Barack Obama. Yeah, the verdict is out. President Trump convicted on 34 charges. The former president found guilty, yet the polls are showing his conviction is not deterring his voters at all. If anything, it's growing the base, boosting President Trump's popularity. Joe Biden also gave his remarks today about the verdict at the White House, claimed that it is reckless to say that the Justice Department is rigged. Here's Feeble Joe. Listen.
And it's reckless. It's dangerous. It's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
Oh, it was rigged. It was a foregone conclusion. America knows that. Democrats know that. This whole bogus trial was corrupt. Join me now to dive into this astonishing moment in American history is a former Trump attorney, John Eastman. John, thank you for being here. You've had some time for this to settle in. Not quite 24 hours, but close. For the Trump campaign, I want to focus on the positive here for a second. We'll get back to the 34 convictions, which will get thrown out on appeal. But let's start with this. $35 million, almost 500,000 donations. So many, in fact, the website crashed a couple of times as people flocked to support Donald Trump. A flash poll from Daily Mail showed him bounce 6 points up as a result of what happened. I mean, the American people know this was a sham. This was a show trial. This was a political hunt, wasn't it? They know it, John.
Well, they do. Look, the American people take great offense at injustice, and this was injustice writ large. It was blatant. It was in our face. And President Biden, I'm sorry, but your claims that we should just act like sheep and take this sitting down is not who we are as an American people. Look, the prosecution was allowed to put into evidence that Mr. Cohen pled guilty to a violation of federal campaign law. In fact, there were no violations of federal campaign law. And the expert, the former Federal Election Commission commissioner that Trump's lawyers wanted to put on to say that, was precluded from testifying. These are the kind of things that create reversible error in this court, and one hopes that the New York appellate courts will deal with it quickly. But I've also urged that the Supreme Court take this up, that somebody for Trump's team file a original constitutional writ of habeas corpus directly with the Supreme Court. We are now on the verge of the Republican nomination conventions in July. President Trump will be sentenced 4 days before that. It would be preposterous for him to accept that nomination from a jail cell. And so the court needs to move quickly to put an end to this lawfare. And let's be very clear. That's what it is. News accounts indicate that somebody was news accounts indicate that somebody was deputized from Biden's Department of Justice to go help manage this litigation after the Department of Justice and the Federal Election Commission already declined to bring any action because there was no crime here. This was a manufactured crime, taking stale misdemeanors at best and trying to turn them into felonies. This is an outrage beyond belief. And I think the Democrats are going to rue the day that they opened the Pandora's box on this.
I agree with you there. I think that they're going to regret the day. The bounce on the polling, $35 million in 24 hours. a move of people coming to Trump saying, even though people that don't like Trump say, I don't like what's happening more than I don't like him. Therefore, they're coming over. That's a fact. Look, a violation of federal election law, and you couldn't put an election commission, an FEC person on the stand. All right, first of all, it's a federal offense if it exists at all. You can't try that in state court. It's never been done before. Not that I can find anywhere, John. Secondly, falsification of business records is a misdemeanor in New York, and they also would have expired in 2019 if those were even crimes at all, but they resurrected them by turning them into felonies with magic dust or however they did that. And then the tax violations that they allegedly threw in there, we didn't even hear about until the jury got its instructions, which, by the way, were 50 pages long. They weren't allowed to take the jury instructions with them. We weren't allowed to see the jury instructions, which is normal to see for the press. All of that is just the latest. This was a preconceived outcome, a preconceived notion. I mean, I don't know, rigged is the right word. It was preordained. How about that, John?
Well, I always look at these things through the lens of the language on the marble frieze above the Supreme Court of the United States: equal justice under law. And what we had in 2016, we know that Hillary Clinton laundered millions of dollars through her law firm, claiming it was for legal expenses, when they hired foreign agents to conduct a false Russia collusion narrative in collaboration and collusion with high officials in the United States government. These were actual crimes and violations of federal election law and a lot of other things, and none of them have been prosecuted. Hillary's campaign got fined. Whoopee deal. So you want to look at equal justice under law. The people that actually committed crimes under the Federal Election Campaign Act are let off scot-free, and then this one is manufactured. That is not only not equal justice, it's no justice at all. Yeah.
I want to point this out. Again, you've been in this legal arena, this political arena for a long time. NDAs. What they're saying here is that Donald Trump needed to file that as a campaign expense. NDAs happen with campaigns every single day in election season. They are never put down as a campaign expense, are they? Ever.
No, and in fact, if he had put it down as a campaign expense and had tried to reimburse it from campaign funds, they would be going after him for violating the Federal Election Campaign Act. The fact of the matter that he did this correctly, now they're trying to manufacture a claim. Look, I mean, remember 30 years ago in the bimbo eruption stuff that Hillary was in charge of on Bill Clinton's campaign. None of those people were ever charged with any crimes for trying to hide that information from the voters in the election. I mean, this is unprecedented, and too many people. I mean, this is a moment of moral clarity in our country, and the fact that there are people on the left cheering this abuse of our criminal justice system tells us a lot about what the left has become.
All right, Paula Jones got $850,000 adjusted for inflation. I think that's $1.41 million. I'll have to check the math, but I'll just say, and there was no charge against Bill Clinton for paying Paula Jones $850,000. Now, I only have a moment left here, but I'd like to ask you this. What's the process from here? You talk about the Supreme Court, and I think it would be done under Bush v. Gore because of the language there when Florida was playing games with the election laws. I think they would apply here as well, potentially, or the New York Appellate Division. How fast can this be resolved? It's never going to hold up. They just want it to hold up through November 5th. Can that be short-circuited and have the Democrats eat crow? Last word to you, John.
Well, I believe it can be, but the New York Appellate Division needs to act quickly. And if they don't, I think an original writ of habeas corpus, constitutional writ of habeas corpus, should be filed post haste in the U.S. Supreme Court. And they will probably not take it if the New York courts are acting with the expeditiously as this case requires. But I think having that there and the Supreme Court looking over their shoulder would ensure that this gets resolved in very short order.
Well, I guess I would ask you this then. I would ask you that, do you trust the appellate division of the state of New York to get this right? I mean, the whole world knows this is wrong. The pundits on MSNBC and CNN know this is wrong. Well, can they get it right?
Well, one would hope, and I continue to hold out faith in our justice system that egregious errors like this get corrected. But I think trust but verify, as they say. If the Supreme Court is watching over their shoulder, the odds that they get it right are greatly increased.
Well, there you go, John Eastman. I really appreciate your expertise and experience here. There's no substitute for it. Strange days in America, but we'll continue on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.